welcome to that spiritual, actual, factual answers to questions you're asking. You find them inside you, recite you, reciting the records. Akashic, we laughing, we drafting the passion to vary. It's time for that comedy, dramedy, all of the fanciest, catchiest acronyms. Listeners, listen, we traveling. Conscious is always unraveling. The reading you're having is mapping you back to your natural habitat. Abracadabra, it's magicless, passing it. To top it off, the host, all the classiest. Now, what were you asking for? All of the answers? What? All the answers.
Yay.
I miss your fucking faces, you guys.
God, totally. You too.
I tear up just looking at you right now all of a sudden. I was like, oh my God, I miss you.
Me too. I so thought of you, Cass, because I had like the most intense therapy today. And like
I don't mean
right
to laugh
before,
at your therapy.
You should laugh. We should fucking laugh because we better fucking laugh. We're all gonna die if we don't laugh. Like, it was so intense because it was like, if people will, knowing me at all, you might not believe what I'm gonna say, but like, I have a very hard time calling my therapist out on stuff.
Oh, wow.
Because because I think of mommy projection things. Like, she's of my mother's generation and they're a similar age. And so it feels like I'm confronting mommy on some level. And my mom was terrifying to me.
Right.
And so like, this woman is not terrifying. She's wonderful. But I get so painfully uncomfortable when I'm like, no, actually what you're doing is incorrect. I need you to hear me. You're saying therapy shit at me that is not true for my experience. Here's my experience. And then she has to go like, oh, she like had to look at herself today and be like, wow, I think I was feeling some jealousy there of this other person you talked to. And I need to let that go. And I think I projected on you a little bit. And I'm going like, then I'm devastated because the projected mommy figure of my therapist is not perfect. And then that's devastating to the inner child who's like, but I need mommy to be safe. And then fucking therapist is being a human, God forbid. But so I had to like call her on stuff and then deal with the fact that she's not perfect mom. And then all the pain of all that. And then at the end, I was just like, well, I feel sad and terrible now. Bye. And then I cried in my bed for a little bit after. And I was like, now I feel a lot better because feelings and they pass, right? But it was hard.
I have not had to face, I mean, I wasn't in therapy long enough to face a lot of things, I'll be honest, but I never had to face that like bullshit, calling bullshit on the person who's calling bullshit on you.
Yep.
Wow. That sounds challenging.
It was hard. And she said, and I said to her, do you have any idea how hard this is for me to call you on this right now? Do you know how uncomfortable I fucking am? She's like, yes, but it's very important you do it because this is going to show, I'm sure, in other parts of your life, where are you not, and then of course the answer is always in my dating life is where I'm so afraid to be like, I have this thing where it's like needs are not okay. Like emotional needs. Like if I say to you, Cass, I just need you to look at me while we're talking. Could you just look at me? I am a terrible devastation of a human for needing that from you.
Oh, I know.
And so like needing the therapist to do something different, who's like sort of this projected authority figure and also kind of my mom, but none of that is true, but it kind of is to your psyche. It was such a head fuck. And then my heart was all like, ah. And then here's the best part. Here's the end. Here's how you know she's so great. She texted me after because we were like not done. And I'm like sobbing in a fucking fetal position in my bed. And she goes, we could do an extra half hour around blah, blah o'clock. And I said, that would be good, except I'm taping my podcast then. And she was like, well, how about this other time? And I'm like, sweet. So she's going to do an extra half hour with me today just because she gets that, like, it was pretty fucking devastating for me to like not get to get her full. I needed her to apologize. And it took her the fucking full session to apologize. And by the end of the session, she's like, I should have said sorry earlier. And I was like, yeah, then we could have been doing therapy instead of me feeling all confused about what was happening. And the reason I was confused about what was happening is because I can't believe that in the face of a quote unquote professional, I might know more in that moment.
Yeah.
Like I might be actually right.
Yeah.
Like that child mom dynamic comes up where it's like, I'm sure I'm off. I'm sure.
Right.
And she's like, no, I need you to tell me what you perceive because I might be off. And I'm like, holy fuck, I gotta speak truth to mommy power. I can't. I'm gonna shut down. I can't.
Whew.
So anyway, all that happened.
How you feeling now?
Like I said, better. I cried and then she made the extra appointment and then now I feel better. Like I feel calmer and centered again and it's fine. And interestingly, our guest today is a therapist and a new buddy of mine. His name is Shane and he is an interesting dude. And I'm really excited for us all to get to talk to him because he's like, he's someone who's been through a lot in a really different way than I have. Like we've talked about, I've got all the traumas or whatever. He's got like, imagine any kind of dude trauma that could be very stereotypically dude-ful. Like you're rock climbing and you touch a rock and it falls off and you fall 50 stories and don't die, but then all your organs are fucked up. And then another time a guy punches you in the face and your nose is broken and your eye comes out of the socket. Like a lot of shit like that.
Motorcycle crashes, rock climbing accidents,
bro
bar
stuff.
Fights.
That's right.
Got it.
Like glass in the face.
Yeah.
You know,
going undercover in South America as a CIA agent. He's Bourne. He's Jason Bourne is what you're telling us.
He's Jason Bourne, but he looks like, for real, Sean Penn.
Perfect.
You're going to meet Sean Penn's doppelganger in a minute who lives the life of Jason Bourne, but now is a therapist.
No, that tracks. That totally tracks.
And anyway,
Go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to say totally irrelevant to any of this. I just had a moment of just enjoying, this is so off fucking topic. I just was hearing you and your delivery and I was like, oh yeah, I think I could start to develop a Katie impression.
Oh my God. I'm so excited.
I think part of it goes, imagine that imagine. And then the word dude is also like, that's key.
That's
dude,
key.
That stretched out dude. And imagine
Pretty
like
good.
That's your setup for a lot of things. So I'm working on it. I'm just letting you know, starting to plant the seeds of a good Katie impression.
I feel honored and excited inside of my body parts.
Yeah. I think it's the most flattering thing when someone can make fun of you correctly. Like, right?
When you can do
when he can get it right. And that, I am not a master impressionist, but, in fact, I will say right now, to any listeners out there, if you would like to record a short, audio impression of either one of us that you may have developed over listening to our podcast, and send us that audio file, we would love to receive said, impressions.
Oh, that's a fun idea. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
Can I tell you, I want to tell you another thing before we bring Shane on, which is that another crazy thing about what's happening being out here in Colorado in this Southwest corner thing, where the energy of the land is so profound. I'm having like more and more and more healing occur from the ground up through the base chakra up to 1, 2, 3 upward instead of like bringing it down and in. And it's like doing all this womb healing and it's really kind of intense and good. But I'm finding like I'm having more and more peace and more like feeling whole and integrated to the point where I'm worried that at some point I'm going to be like, I don't need the records anymore. I don't need any of this shit anymore.
You're going to stop going up and you start going down. That's what you're saying.
Oh, I go down, Cassidy.
Hey now.
It's the first thing I do. I say hello. I shake your hand and then I drop
you're healing
your hand.
your work is going to start coming up through the chonch instead of down through the crown.
The chonch. Yeah. So maybe what you're saying is
It's my favorite word. I just had to say it.
What you're saying to me, this is what I'm hearing you say, is in the future, my sessions with people will be about digital penetration in their chonch.
That's for you to say. I would never claim such a thing. I didn't say anything about fingers. Mine was all about light.
You know what's fun
and
too
very
is
obscene.
chonch healings. Maybe that's the name of my that's my new business.
Chonch healing?
But how do we make it more alliterative?
Right.
Chonch chalupa. It has to have chonch in it.
Challenge
clearly.
the chonch.
Oh, now you're talking.
Yeah.
Now you're talking. Well,
Something with crystals. Crystal
speaking
chonch.
of chonches and challenging them, I think we should not make our guest wait anymore. Should we bring
All
him
right.
on?
Let's bring
I
him
got so
on.
many things to tell you about this dude. I'll do a little intro when he comes on.
And he'll be like, those are none of them.
Before we bring him on, real quick, did you get laid, Cassidy?
No.
Aww.
It's
Smoking
it's that I'm
jacket?
wearing a red a maroon suede jacket, and just makes me feel more at ease.
You just seem super chill.
Uh
I'm like, Daddy
so-
got visited by a chonch machine.
Honestly, I was stressing out the last 24 hours about this whole garbage bulky pickup situation that turned sideways. It's not interesting, but they finally came this morning and actually took the stuff after back and forth and angry and that's not true bullshit. So like that being lifted from me, I think has chilled me out. So stupid.
So you don't need sex, is what you're saying. You need problems
Problems to be solved.
Problem to be
I
solved.
mean, I'm not going to say I don't need sex, but I've kind of given up on the idea of it for a little while. So
I see.
I've released. This is mental. We'll talk about the other stuff. We did that in the episode you're going to hear prior to this one. You'll have already heard from our butt stuff episode where we talked about this stuff.
Right.
Point being, I kind of let go of like that hunger need for
Yeah.
sex. And it feels very liberating to not need it.
Okay, here's another way you can not need it. Have some of it.
Sure. It's
Have
just
some.
that it's so, I mean, California is like spike. I can't really connect with people outside of my
COVID.
circle. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just,
No. I didn't mean that. I
Awkward.
apologize. Let me clarify what I meant. I didn't mean like you should I'm like giving you shit and go have some. I meant like for those for the listener.
Katie's saying she got laid and wanted us to wants to ask
Oh,
about it.
That's not what I was saying at all. But what I
Okay.
do mean is, although I could say that, but I wasn't saying that. What I was saying was, it's like sometimes like the need is strong and you got to like kind of like get over it or deal with it or process something. Other times the need is strong and you got to bone down. So anyway, that's all I was acknowledging. And I may have done some pole
Down boning.
hopping.
Hopping. So that implies more than one. Which is fine.
No,
No
I'm
judgment
saying
here,
when
just
you
careful
hop
about
up and down on a pole.
Not like hopping, like bar hopping indicates like going from bar to bar.
Right.
So that's why I took pole hopping to be going from pole to pole.
Well, you could pole hop on one pole and then pole hop to another pole
Right.
in a theoretical universe.
Apparently, we're never going to recover from the butt stuff episode. It's just going
Nah.
to keep coming back.
Why would we?
Thank God. I've missed just getting weird and gross. We
Right?
had a
Come
heavy
on.
several months going on for a little while.
Man. We all need to pole hop a little bit.
Yeah. Figuratively or literally.
Yep.
Or personally. If we have to, that's what we have. If that's what
Privately or
privately,
publicly.
personally, or in pairs or more, like whatever. But just for God's sake, be fucking careful out there. It is a fucking nightmare. It is horrifying.
You're talking about the spike in COVID.
Yeah, it's getting really bad. This is weird, off topic.
Yep.
I heard this story about people who, like a nurse was saying, like, she's with people as they die and they are yelling at her that this is a hoax.
I heard that yesterday.
That is just, my head is broken because of that. It's not, I don't care what you think it is. You are dying. That is not a hoax.
I really hear you. And I feel that same way about when I see I'm just going to say it, the Trump people marching on Washington, like, and they interviewed a bunch of them. They interviewed this one lady and they were like, they said something like, I don't know, they asked her something and she goes, they said, where do you get your news? And the lady who was a Trump supporter, like who's marching in the street saying that the voter counting was wrong.
Right.
Because he lost. She goes, not from you. And he goes, I get that. You don't believe in the media. You don't listen to us. Where do you get your news? And she said, from us. And he said, what do you mean? And she said, there's a radio station called Citizen, we make it up.com or something. It was like Citizen Radio. And it's like local people in her town that are Trump supporters that just say what they feel like reality is on the radio.
Just trade ideas and that's your facts.
Make stuff up they want to have be true. But the weird irony is, of course, that's exactly what they think we're doing. They think
right.
Liberal media is just making stuff up based on what we feel because we're so emotional liberals and we're making stuff up rather than being the hardline Trump supporters we should be. And it's like in therapy, they call that a double bind. When like both sides, like if you have a couple that's like working some shit out and one is just like, and you're trapped in a loop where nobody can get free, it's a double bind because both people believe the other person is doing the thing at them that they believe is being done to them.
Right. And we've seen that very much. Like, and literally you can, just to make it about Trump for a sec, like so often you'd be like, the literal thing that he says is happening is because it's what he's doing. He'll say, you know, you're doing this
Fake
to deny me
news.
this.
Right.
And then you're like, no, that is literally, we just saw how you are actually doing that. So he keeps accusing other people of doing the thing that he knows is happening because he's doing it.
Which is the thing I got taught in one of the healing schools I went to. They said, maybe I've said this before, but anytime a person ever points their finger at you accusingly, if there's like that, if there's ever accusatory pointing, where I'm going, you 9 times out of 10 can be certain they themselves are doing that thing right now that they're pointing at you about.
That's the 3 fingers pointing back at you, which is more than the one that's pointing. Oh, here comes our guy.
Exactly. There's our Shane.
Shane Nelson. He's still connecting to audio.
Shane is here and he can hear us.
But he is still muted.
Are you muted? Is he muted?
He is.
Oh, yeah, you're
Unmute
muted,
yourself,
Shane.
sir.
Unmuted. Thank you.
Hi, Shane.
Hi. How are you? How are you, Cassidy?
I am great. Happy to see you.
Happy to see you. You remind me of Mark Marion if he wasn't such a self-loathing douchebag.
Yeah, I've kind of forgiven him everything because his partner died during COVID and he did a radio story on it. Yeah.
That's why I shouldn't. That's why I don't call people douchebags.
Right.
Hold
now
on.
you feel like an asshole. Sorry, I didn't mean to shit on you there,
totally okay.
Shane.
I was
but
trying to be funny.
I know,
Wait
but
a
you're
minute.
right. I do kind of look like Mark Maron right now.
But the voice.
Yeah, it's
After listening to the
Marin.
podcast.
Mark Maron. But so was
Maron.
Mark Maron with a woman? so he tricked a human woman into dating him.
Not just day, like they were fully in it, and and then she died during COVID. And I haven't listened to it, but apparently he did it. Like he went ahead and did a whole episode where he just talked about his feelings. He's like, this is what happened.
That could be a game changer for him.
Yeah.
Whew. Well, I mean, he talks about his feelings a fair amount. Now that we're paused, Cassidy, Jamal Brown, Jackson, Malcolm, Jamal Warner. Doesn't Shane look like Sean Penn?
He does a little bit,
right?
Yeah,
little Sean Penn action.
Little Sean Penn. I mean,
that feels good. I'm not gonna lie.
Give him
you
the profile.
You got a rugged look, my friend. It is.
Yeah.
It is solid. You've got that rugged look down.
I mean, it's earned. I think I came out pretty, and I've done this to it.
Yeah, I mean, there's different angles into pretty, and I've got the neurotic Mark Maron look going, but you've got the Sean Penn look going, so that's great.
I had no idea what you looked like when I was listening to all the podcasts, and I was like, dude, he sounds like if I wanted to hang out with Mark, that's you.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. I dig it. No, I'll take that as a compliment. He was my podcast hero for a little while. I just got bored of his thing after a while, but I listened to it for years and thought it was amazing.
It had some value for sure.
Yeah.
So just for everybody's context, Shane is a human man. He's 2 legs, attractive, looks like Sean Penn. Also, he's a person with his own spiritual experience that I was excited to have on because I love hearing different people's sort of lenses and ways into their connection with the divine. And when he started to tell me some of his own experiences of God talking to him, I was a lot fascinated and drawn in, and I think we could have some interesting chit chats about it. And I am interested too, Shane, in your thoughts and feelings about the relationship between trauma and knowing God. Because I have my own perspective, and having heard a couple of your stories, I sort of go, this guy has to have some points of view about that. What do you got?
Man, good question. In my experience through life, I grew up non-religious, but I always had some fucking hope out of like spite for what it is I saw in organized religion, that there is something. Like I always felt that there had to be, like I hadn't touched it, I hadn't felt it, but something had to be working on our behalf. Something, it has to matter, because otherwise I wouldn't feel these things that I do. And in my experience, when people are born into and indoctrinated at a young age into organized religion, and they talk to me about their faith, I find a real lack of test worthiness. Like it's probably a really good phrase for that, but like road worn, I fucking believe in God, and you can't break my faith. It's a book faith. It's a quote faith. It's a I was told this faith. And so this is what I believe. And I believe trauma is the stairway to God. It's almost an escalator. Like if you allow yourself to perhaps think of the purpose behind it, or really look at the effect of it, whatever doesn't kill you doesn't always make you stronger. It can break you. And I think the people that I know that have found God in their life usually have they might not even classify it as trauma, but they had experiences that were intense and permanent and left a mark. And that allows one to really investigate, why the fuck did this happen to me? And a deeper consciousness will ask, what can I do with it? And I'm a big fan of the hero's journey. I teach it, and I didn't know it, but I was living it. And that's Joseph Campbell's theory. And it starts with the ordinary world that a person lives in. And then there's a call to action. And that can be trauma. And when somebody, and that call can come multiple times, and we're like, I'm not taking that call. I'm not voicemail. I'll get back to him later. But when someone truly answers that call, that journey begins, and there's no turning back. And I feel I've been able to incorporate that. I work with adolescents and veterans with combat related disorders, and people in recovery, and survivors of sexual trauma. Trauma is attracted to me, and I'm attracted to it, and I personally and professionally. And sometimes that's a burden. Sometimes it's the purpose. I know my purpose, and I feel I'm very fortunate in that. But kids are going through hell right now. And it's funny that we're talking about things more as a culture. It's never been safer to be trans or gay or different or odd. Bullying is bad. We know this. It hasn't eradicated any of that. Nobody's journey is easy in that world, but we are moving forward. We are having some gains. And when I'm able to impart to a young person whose life has sucked, who was born into suck, whose environment sucks, whose parents suck, what I'm able to impart to them, that you might possibly be being crafted for something very important. The light in their eyes, the idea of purpose or value to this pain, it sticks. It gives it a sacred context for the very first time. Yeah. And people begin to, and then I'm really able to tell them, like, that's how I got here. Yeah. And we generally have a positive relationship, which is why we're having this conversation, or why we're in each other's worlds. And it validates that. It shows them it's possible, and it gives it some truth.
So, the concept, I love all of that resonates. I think we all get what you mean. The concept of, the sort of woo-woo people version of it is like, they'll say it's the cracks that let the light in, and there's that, what is it, Leonard, is that a Leonard Cohen song where he says that? Or
Leonard Cohen.
Yeah. For me, I heard that when I was in like a lot of 12-step for a lot of years. I heard that phrase a lot, and people would say like, I'm broken, but I'm perfectly broken, or it's the breaks in me that let the light in, or whatever. When I started to learn about energy work, what you discover is that literally that's the case. In other words, the fact that like my system was all penetrated inappropriately from all different angles, like emotionally, psychologically, physically, all the things. There's literally cracks in my field and in my psyche excuse me, that allow me to perceive other dimensions and other realities. And the interesting thing on my end has been like discovering that even as you heal those cracks up, you give them love, the parts that are unintegrated reintegrate, you bring light to the pain, you bring light to the darkness, whatever form of healing you do, it doesn't change the fact that, like you said to me yesterday, Shane, that there's still like a place in there that got hurt. Even though it might be a healed place, it's like when you break your leg or a horse breaks their leg, that leg is never perfect again, but you can get it to where it's functioning and you can run fast and be a happy horse. But if somebody, if you looked at that leg, it's a little janky. Similarly, like these cracks will always be present to a certain degree in my psyche, which hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll see what happens, because I don't know about you, but on my spiritual path, every time I think I know what shit is flipped upside down 47 more times. So I've given up being like, here's how it is for sure. It's like, well, here's how it is today. And how it is today is that those cracks remain, but now they serve this really distinct purpose, and they literally let the light in. The divine light is what I transmit for people. It couldn't come in if I weren't so cracked open. That's my experience with it.
I think when we get shattered or broken, we also have the opportunity to pick up the pieces we want and put them back together. We can leave some shit on the ground that doesn't hold value anymore.
What do you mean specifically? Like, what's an example of that?
So let's say your specific trauma. I think mine was around abandonment. And that has, in more than one moment, my life shattered. My students made a meme of me, and it was this woman fucking sobbing, and it said, "Everything is so meaningful," and I hung it on my door. This is everybody gets this.
We love you. We love you.
I feel loved. The abandonment, like it has shattered me more than once. I felt abandoned more than once, whether I pushed them away or whatever, or it was beyond my control. And had those, when I look at those pieces, I get to look at, as I evolve and I continue down this path, I get to pick what I put back in terms of the value of that. Like I get to go back and look at the map. And after that, after I shattered in previous experiences, where did that lead me? Where did I wind up with what I did with that moment? And I generally find that it led to a beautiful, sacred growth. It led to a different place, and I get to not incorporate. It turns into a lesson. It turns into beauty. It transforms that feeling of being left and not good enough and no one's going to stick around because I'm too fucking intense or odd or weird or deep. It's not a punishment anymore. It's a blessing. It set me free from that and allowed me to go bigger and bolder places I wasn't able to comprehend or foresee or have the imagination to even craft in my mind.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess what I'm hearing you say, and you tell me if this is off, but I'm hearing you talk about how you frame in your mind reality.
Yeah.
When you say pick up the pieces you want and don't pick up the other pieces, I think what I'm hearing you talk about is you can choose how to frame the purpose of it mentally. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very healing. And I think I told you about one of my most significant loves in my life, Light Dreamer Eternity. Her mom told me once.
Wait, let's pause. We have to pause. Cassidy, yeah. I need you to hear this.
Oh, I heard it. I just wasn't going to say anything.
The name of the woman, human woman.
How do you say no to that? Like,
was Light Dreamer Eternity. It would be easy for me to say no to it.
Not me. I mean, she literally came out of the dark the night we met. There was a big bonfire and we were in Lake Powell, and she was front lit by the fire. She walked around it and then got between me and the fire and started walking at me. So then she was backlit and the light was just coming at me. And I was partaking in some like fungus activities. And it just,
fungal work.
Yeah, I would have been a fool to deny that light coming my way. But her mom, Summer, cared about me and wanted me to be good for her daughter. And so did a lot of work on me Cassidy, I listened to the first podcast, and when you were describing, like, you're like skeptical and don't like, I know bullshit when I see it.
Right.
I'm the scales on that. Like, when I meet a guy who's renamed himself White Eagle Claw Beartooth Feather, like,
You go,
get the fuck out of my truck.
Right.
And but these people were real, and they proved over, and I loved their daughter. And Summer told me, you know, Shane, you can change the past. And I was like, no, Summer, bullshit. And she said, well, if you look at the mistake you made and it becomes a lesson, you've changed it from a mistake to a lesson, and you've gained power. And that changes. And if the mistake hurts somebody else, and you can prove to them, it's like the amends step in AA. Like, when it's right, you can go back and make that amends and hopefully have some real healing for them, you know? And if you've hurt someone in a mistake and you go back and you show, like, you're able to show, like, I'm also big into science as much as I am into the ethereal and the ether. If you can show them that you have learned from it and it did cause and promote change in you because it fucking mattered how you made them feel.
Yeah.
Like, that mattered to you.
Yeah.
She convinced me.
I love that change the past idea.
Yeah.
Because that taps into a lot of my sort of work has been around, like, the narrative. What is the story you've been telling yourself? Like, what narrative have you been buying into? And that's just, and narrative is generally stuff that's behind you.
Yep.
You know, and so like, you're not actually changing the three-dimensional practical facts of the event. You know, you're not changing that I walked to that store and opened that door. But what you're changing is the meaning of it, what it actually represented, what your understanding of the intention of it was, all those things. And I really, that resonates deeply.
We have so little control of things outside of ourselves in this world, in this life, and gives you control of an outcome.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in outcomes, and like, you never really know the outcome because it continues to play on with how you're coping and dealing and learning or growing or refusing and denying and stuffing it down.
Yeah.
So like, the outcomes, man, we can, whatever pain, like the heartbreak or the loss you have, like, you have some control over that and some control over others' experience of that.
What was your first spiritual experience?
It had to have been 21 years old, Mohawk, monster truck. My girlfriend worked at Hooters. I was living in the Front Range. I was king of the fucking world, you know. By 1991 criteria, like, I peaked. But I'd done a year in college and really just wanted to get back with my ride or die boys because we were so important to each other. So I became a roofer and was running my own. I was a crew of one, and I got to roof this whole complex outside of Red Rocks. And I was having a lot, like, my friends and I, we were kind of turning on each other. We were that ride or die was turning mostly into ride or die. And I had this moment at the end of a day. I mean, I could taste the salt of the sweat of that day's work. And I was sitting on the top of this 3-story house on this roof, and I was looking up towards Red Rocks, and this hawk just flew through my vision. And all of a sudden, it was the first time I've heard the voice. And the voice, people asked me what it sounded like, where it came from. Was it inside? Was it outside? It was everywhere. It was in me. And it always has come through in a very father way. And it said, go home, call Matt Zeitlin, sell your tools, move to Durango, go to college. And I mean, none of that was on my radar. None of that. My buddy Matt had disappeared to Durango to go to college 2 years before, or a year before, and I had forgotten about him. I told him, if you come back driving a VW bus, listen to the Dead, I will destroy you, because we were metal. And he never came back. And so I went and I got a hold of his family, and they gave me his number, and I called him that night, and he was having a party, and he's like, hold on, let me go. And I go, how many girls are there? And he's like, a lot. And I'm like, how many days did you ski this year? And he goes, a bunch. I'm like, how is college going? He goes, I dropped out, but I'm going back. And I was like, I'll see you on Tuesday. And he goes, well, wait. I'm coming back this week. You can give me a ride back. And he came back, and we got in my sweet ass truck, and I had an embroidered dash mat I had custom made because the Chili Peppers album had just kept Blood Sugar Sex Magic and The Righteous and the Wicked just embroidered on my dash mat. And we had the best, like, it was a sacred drive back to Durango. I remember buying a $4.99 tape at the convenience store next to my old junior high where we used to shoplift from, and it was the Allman Brothers' Greatest Hits. And at some point in the drive, Midnight Rider came on, and I had my first anthem. It was beautiful. Like, and then we got there and my interview went really well and they let me in on a probationary status. And there was a moment in Durango, my buddy, I had another friend there that I didn't realize, but he was bartending, which is like a king job in a college town. We went in there, there's all these microbrews on tap, but he was giving us the Michelob for free, which I thought was the best. And I remember like a healthy buzz, feeling good. And I walked out in the sun, like it's like the 6 o'clock summer sun in Durango, like August. And this old cowboy couple were walking down the street holding hands and slow, like he hurt. You could tell he hurt when he walked, and she fucking loved him and he fucking loved her. And I bet they had, their stories are what I want. And my mohawk, I realized this point was used to like push people right away, to like get a reaction. And that man looked at me and she smiled at me and they weren't intimidated and he goes, "How you doing tonight, young man?" And I'm like, "I'm really good." And he goes, "Welcome to Durango." And I went home and packed it up. And my last night in Denver, I got with my boys and I was like, "I'm leaving or I'm going to die here. I'm really going to die." That day on the roof, before the hawk flew, I was looking at all these men on the ground, these construction workers, these working men. And most of them were alcoholics. Most of them were sore and broken in some way, their trucks. And then there were the men who had families and came to work and did a great job and had value in that. And then went home to their families. And I didn't see life in any of those. I saw death, a slow death or a fast death for me. And Durango, like, it was such a safe place for me to be my outrageous, unsafe self. The fights here are stupid. The cocaine here isn't real. Things are just different. And it's a safe place. And I learned what friendships were. Like, you don't see your friend and go, "What's up, fuck dick?" You say, "Hey man, how are you?" And I learned a whole new, I had a lot of learning, and this was a safe place for me. And it gave me the wilderness, which was the gateway to my connection, really.
Have you written this screenplay yet? Because this is a great this is Good Will Hunting too. This is a good screenplay.
I fucking lost it in that movie.
I imagine.
Yeah, I
can only imagine.
I called one of my best friends we had a falling out, and I was like, "I love you so much, man." Those were my boys. We just don't have that stupid Boston accent.
There's two things coming to my mind. One is I want to know your second spiritual experience. Like, after that whole thing, like, what was the next big one? But before we go there, I'm reminded of a story of, this will be the like Jewish white girl, upper middle class, erudite theater person version of your story that you just told about the couple on the street.
Yeah.
I had moved to, let me think about it. I'd moved to California. I was like 4 years sober, and I had moved to California to go to grad school. I'm from Miami. I went to college in Massachusetts, lived in New York a couple years, went back to Miami, lost my shit in Miami, and then wound up going to grad school in Northern California. But when I got to grad school, there was, I had written a solo show, my first solo show, when I was in treatment in Miami. I had gone back home to Miami, lost my mind, went to a 2-month inpatient treatment center, wrote a solo show. The solo show was actually quite good. I moved to Northern California and started touring the solo show. And as it would happen, that show would not stop touring. It just kept getting jobs and kept getting jobs. And I don't even know if you know this story, Cass, but I just kept charging more and more for Insides Out. You know that show?
Uh-huh. I know of it.
People would, like, I did it and people would say, like, oh, somebody in the audience would see it and say, "Come to Nebraska State College and do this show. What do you charge?" And I'd be like, I was like 24. And I'd be like, $700. I just like say a number and they'd be like, "Sure, no problem." So then the next person, there'd be somebody in that audience and they'd say, "Will you come up to Calgary and do it?" And I'd be like, "Yes." And they'd be like, "What do you charge?" And I'd be like, $1,500. And they'd be like, "Okay." And everybody kept saying yes until I was charging $5,000 every time I did that hour-long play. They would fly me there and feed me food and pay me $5,000 to like do my dream thing, which was perform this show and touch people's hearts, and women would cry and they'd come up and thank me after, and it was kind of amazing. So the show gains a bunch of momentum and it's happening and I'm feeling really good about it. This is probably right before you and I met, Cass, before we did Hunter Gatherers, a couple years before that. Anyway, I get a gig in New York City and I had lived there before. It's a long story. I fly to New York City from California during grad school to perform the show. I do the show. After the show, the next morning, I go to a Starbucks. And in Starbucks, I'm standing in line with Mike Myers. And Mike Myers is like chit-chatting with whoever he's with. And I'm thinking like, God, what do I say so I don't sound like a douche? But I want to say something. And I had a show that night, and I really wanted to invite him to the show. And I'm feeling like, oh, I'm just a rando. Come on, what am I going to do? Mr. Myers, will you come see my play that I'm at? You know, I just didn't know what to do. So I go outside, and I didn't resolve the problem. And there was an ATM, and I was getting cash out of the ATM. And all in one moment, the following events occurred. I get $20 out of the ATM. I look to my left. There's a huge truck-shaped limo that has parked on the side of the road. Whoopi Goldberg gets out of the truck by herself. No team, no bodyguards. She gets out of the truck. I'm fully obsessed with Whoopi Goldberg at the time. I lock eyes with her. I can't believe what's happening. She walks down the road toward me, looks me in the eyes, and she goes, "You keep it up."
Yeah.
And I was like, the woman whose solo show I worshiped, her first stand-up hour was a solo show, essentially, just told me to keep it up. And I'm in New York doing my solo show inspired by her. And then so she walks by, and I'm like, what the fuck? And my friend Christina was with me, and she looked at me like, do you know her? And I go, no. And then I turn to my right, and there's Mike Myers. And because I was so bolstered up by the Whoopi Goldberg moment, I go, Mr. Myers, you're the best. I love your stuff. You're so funny. We're doing a show tonight. If you can come. Here's my card. Gave him the card. And it was just this triumphant, like, magic from the sky. You're on the right track message that I got, that I was reminded of when you told your couple story.
You keep it up.
You keep it up. In the eyes, Whoopi Goldberg. Why? What does she know? That's it.
I'm not even going to ask if he came because I don't care. It doesn't matter. That's a fucking great moment.
It's a good moment.
Yeah.
I want the end of the story to be, he came and then my whole life was different. That didn't happen.
Well,
but the moment of it was really great. So, yeah.
This is great. This is great too.
Yeah.
This moment.
Good for you guys. Yeah, you got this. I've been jamming your podcast. I do a lot of driving in the last 24 hours. Like I feel like I'm already your friend. You just don't know it yet.
Aw, that is one of the biggest compliments we can get on the podcast.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's so intelligent, and it's up my alley. And you, Cassidy, you bring in the in a good way, in an open and intelligent way.
I keep thinking that I'm trying to be a skeptic and utterly failing to be a skeptic because I'm like, no.
She's like the John Deere of spiritual healers. Like, she's gonna run you right over the tractor. Like,
she's right, because I'm like, nope, that fucking checks out everything. Nope, that works.
Yeah, you tap out
what you just said,
and then try and get back in. But
what's the point? Why fight it? Why fight when it's right? Like, don't
you want to live in a world where Bigfoot is real?
I do.
Yeah,
right?
Me too.
Katie, I think he just called you Bigfoot.
Oh, that's great. I feel more attractive now as a woman.
Maybe Sasquatch.
That's more attractive? It's the same. Sasquatch
Go on with what you were going to say.
Okay, so then I want to know what happened next what was the next kind of big bright light moment, if you could? And then I think we should open your records after that.
So I'm going to give you a choice. There was a culminative spiritual moment that wasn't the next one, but it is the one. Or you can hear the next one, which I told you in our conversation about having a death experience where I heard a voice and I fought for my life.
Right.
Let's do them both.
Yeah, do them both.
We got time.
Yeah. So while you start it, I'm going to go get my prayer, but tell Cassidy. I'll be right back.
Okay.
All right.
So Cassidy.
I'm listening.
Now I'm looking at you in my Zoom.
All right, good.
A month after I got to Durango, I was making friends, man. Like, life was happening. I got a job in this restaurant called Father Murphy's. It was an Irish pub. The girls were so hot, and everyone was living their own life like adults, which was different. Like, my friends and I, we were scraping by.
I think I've been to Father Murphy's.
Have you been to Durango?
Yeah, my parents lived in Bayfield for a little while at the co-housing community that's up there. I don't know if you know the co-housing community near Bayfield.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they lived there. Hartwood. They lived at Hartwood for a little while, so I came out to visit a bit. Anyways, and I think I've been to that. I feel like I've been to that Irish bar.
Its prime years were up to 95.
This would have been later than that, so maybe not. But anyway, go on.
That's when it was cool.
Okay.
It tanked.
Oh, that's a shame.
So I was a dishwasher with the mohawk and hitting on waitresses every time they came to the window, but I was the dishwasher, so I was a punk. And, you know, we were listening to Intergalactic by the Beastie Boys. That's what had just come out. And,
Yes.
you know, what you want? And I got invited on a Lake Powell trip, which wound up being a yearly trip we did every year, which is the story of where I met Light. So this all played. And I went, and at this point in my life, I was really good at drugs, hallucinogens, and drinking. And just on the way there, by the time that the sun had set and the fire was going and people were having a good time, there was cocaine, there was mushrooms, there was acid, there was weed, and a lot of booze. And I said yes. And I was very comfortable and able in that place. Like, that was not foreign territory. I felt I was the Lizard King. And my buddies and I, growing up, would always go up to El Dorado Springs behind Boulder and like climb those rocks in the middle of the night and sit up there and like profess the greatness ahead of us and ponder the existence. And I asked one of my friends, Joe DiGiacomo, like, who I'd met recently, I was like, hey man, you want to go climb that rock and watch the full moon rise? And he's like, no. And I called him a pussy and went on my merry way. And I was climbing this rock and the moon was rising. And so it was very moonlit and I was having a moment, which is why those moments were why I did drugs, because I didn't know how to access that without them. And I got stuck. I was about 35, 40 feet off the ground and I couldn't even move laterally anymore. It was no down and there was only one move up, and it was a bit of a lunge to get this next hold. And I like dialed in. I called it all in, and I was like, this is a big moment, Shane. And I went for it, and I got the rock, and then it broke right off the wall. And I went into the night like this, and again, time stopped, and the fatherly voice that was much more punitive, and it had the disappointment of your father tone in it, that hurtful, the one that hurts you. And he said, that's it. And he was asking me, like, I've given you so much. I've given you so many blessings and so many chances and so much ability. And this is what you do. That's it. And I remember screaming, no, just no, like, please no. Like, I'm just not ready. I'm trying. Like, I'll get there. Not now, please. Give me some more time. And I hit the ground and I hit hard. And I jumped up. My body like responded really fast. And I realized I was alive. And I saw the moon, and then I just collapsed onto the ground, and I was unconscious for about 8 hours. And don't know where I was, don't know what happened in that 8 hours. But when I woke up, the blood that had escaped my body had stuck me to the ground, and I peeled off those rocks and made my way back to the boat.
So you were alone for 8 hours. They had lost you. They didn't know where you were.
They didn't know. Like, I was so new to the group. I wasn't on the attendance list of
right.
Like, and people were also partaking in their own rituals. Right. So I was out of sight, out of mind. And I remember being alive and being really fucking grateful to be alive and knowing that I was broken, but okay. Like, it was physical pain. I took a lot of pride in my youth about mastering physical pain, about how much I could take and move through. And I remember I didn't make any great changes after that. Like, it wasn't this moment of change. It was this moment that, we'll just call it, like, my father asked me if I deserved my life and if I wanted it and valued it. And my reflex response was, yes, please, just not there yet. And I was once again granted passage through something that could have killed me. And if you fast forward to 8 years later, it's 1999. Big part of this story is I was adopted as a baby. I was in foster care for a few months. My mother was an American Irish Catholic 20-year-old unmarried woman. I didn't know anything about anything other than the parents that adopted me were sweet and kind and short and liberal and non-confrontational. And I had to teach my dad how to throw a ball. He'd never been in a fight. Like, what the fuck? And, my mom was a school teacher, and I'd always knew somewhere inside of me that I was going to find my family, and the motive was to find my father, because I was so different than everybody else in this world. I just was different. I felt so much more. I developed a very tough exterior for a short kid who didn't weigh a lot to just protect myself from the pain of the world. But I also felt the beauty and the love of the world at levels I know people next to me weren't feeling. And that's a lot for a kid. That's a lot. And I moved to LA to be with Light, and I packed my shit up in Durango and I took off in my Subaru with my dog Bridger and was going to LA, man. I got some dreams. I'm going to do stuff. Light and I are in love. Like the world is ours. And unknowingly, I was moving home to where I was made, to where my entire biological family lived. I'd begun the search through the courts 10 years before that, and it had lots of dead ends. The internet was brand new at that time, so that wasn't a helpful. I mean, I think things are a lot easier now, but Irish Catholic records of adoption can be very hard to find. And Light and I were headed for a Lake Powell trip, and we were leaving LA, and I just checked in with the woman who was handed my case to find my mother and my father. And I called her, and I hadn't talked to her in months. And she said, I can't believe you're calling me tonight. Like, why are you calling? And I'm like, well, I'm going to Lake Powell, and I just was thinking about you and just wanted to see. And she goes, I found your mother today. And Light, I was like, you found my mom? And Light was in the other room and just froze. It was so beautiful. She just fucking froze. Like, that's how much she loved me, that she froze and just turned. And like all of her life was about me in this moment. And she said, so here's the moment. I'll call her tomorrow if you want me to. And I'm like, yeah, I do. And she goes, you be careful. It was like such a motherly thing to say, knowing I was going to Lake Powell and knowing a bit about me. And so all night I drove, knowing that in the morning I'm going to know, my mom's going to know about it. And it all shifted from wanting to know my dad to wanting to tell my mom I was okay. As I got older, I understood what it must feel like for a woman to give up a child. And like, I was going to be able to like relieve that pain or that guilt or whatever. And called from a payphone. People are already partying, 10 in the morning. And she said, I talked to your mom today. And this is the moment that every adopted kid, it's the crux, because you might hear that she doesn't want to meet you. You might be a really bad secret. You might be the result of something horrible. Her family might not know about you, whatever. She goes, they can't wait to meet you. Your mother married one of your father's best friends. You have a 10-year-old sister, and your father is dead. And she said, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I am. I'm not surprised at all. When she said my father was dead, it was like truth. Like, of course he is. And it just moved over, and I was like, we'll get to that. Tell me about my sister. And so she was 10 and went on this like, oh, and then they said, she's like, well, I can't tell you who he is, but you have a famous uncle. He's an actor, and he's one of my, she's like, I had a crush on this man for years.
Is it Sean Penn? Was it Sean Penn?
It's got to be Sean Penn.
It's got to be Sean Penn.
That's what all of us did, is like, and I was thinking Irish, and I was like, it's either Liam Neeson or Harrison Ford, man. And my friends were like, it's probably Pee Wee Herman. Like, and it turned out to be a man named Robert Logan, who starred in like the Wilderness Family series on Disney movie. Like, he was very cool in his own, like, it wasn't Sean Penn, it wasn't Liam Neeson, it wasn't Harrison Ford, but it was Robert Logan. And that led to this unveiling of, I had not known a thing about my life. I had not known a single soul from my tribe or my line or my blood. And my dad died drinking and driving in 1977 in a one-car accident on Highway 101 off the Avila Beach exit in a ditch that no one saw. It was a ravine more, and they didn't find him for like 24 hours. No one saw the truck down there. And I had just been driving up and down that very same road for my new job in LA as a wilderness educator, having the time of my life, driving past where my dad died the entire time. And for this moment and I got to meet my mom, and I got to hear the story. I got to know about my birth, and my sister gave me this box of photographs of the family, like lines, like lineage of grandparents, and the story from Ireland. And I remember I was living in Venice Beach at the time, and I remember walking around Venice Beach feeling like I just had all the answers to every question I ever asked. And for a moment, like, everything in my life made sense. I knew why I was adopted by these very sweet, kind, loving people, because that's what I needed. My dad didn't have that for parents, and he's dead. And had my dad raised me, I would have been 7 when my dad died, and he would have been my hero, and that would not have gone well. This
is the event you're talking about when you said this is the cumulative one or the cumulative one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was right before Y2K. And then this feeling came over me of like, I have all these answers, but I don't know what to do with it. It all felt so important. Like it was given to me in pieces in time at exactly the right moment. Like I started to look at my drinking. My dad died drinking. That became important rather than like fucking cool. It's not a heroic way to die. And I value in that. And so Y2K is supposed to happen. I quit drinking on December 20th. Told myself, I'm gonna give 30 days, bro. If you can quit for 30 days, you're clearly okay. And it was really, it just happened. I did it. And so New Year's Eve rolls around. I'm sitting on a hill and outside of Tucson with my dog. And I had made a deal with God that if the world doesn't end tonight, I'll start working on myself tomorrow. And Y2K, we all know nothing happened at all. So disappointing. And I woke up and went to the gas station, pulled out a map, picked a place called the Superstition Wilderness and drove there, and took a day to get there. And I got there in the afternoon around 4 and decided just to walk up the trail a little bit, because the next day I was going to camp at my car, and I was going to go into this place for however long it fucking took to find out what I'm supposed to do with this information, because it did not seem like an accident. The voices have guided, like the voices I've heard, I followed their instructions, and here I am. And now I know everything I ever wanted to know. I don't know what it means, like the double rainbow.
You mean knowing about your family and who they were, that made you feel whole, but you weren't sure what to do next? Is that what you mean?
Yes, like with that information.
Okay.
I felt that it wasn't just, okay, now you know. It was like, it was part of something that was happening, and it wasn't the end. And so I started walking up this trail with my dog Bridger, and I just sat down on this rock, and I had just like the thinker, that famous statue. I sat just like that. And the next thing I know, I'm in my tent, and I hear a noise, and it's a bear, and I know it's a bear. And this bear is moving towards me with rage, and anger and purpose. And I knew in my core it was coming to kill me. And my dog Bridger would have gone apeshit to protect me in that moment, but she did that chocolate lab thing of just like looking like with such love and like, this is you. And I remember being more afraid than I'd ever been in my entire life. I was frozen with fear. And the bear, I could hear it getting closer, and the voice came in and it said, "What are you afraid of?" And I said, I don't know. And it said, "What are you afraid of?" And I said, I don't know. And he goes, "Are you afraid of living?" I said, bummer. He said, "Are you afraid of dying?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And he goes, "Well, what are you afraid of?" And I said, "Holy shit, I'm afraid of living." And then with the kindness and wisdom of that father's tone, he had said, "Well, is that what you came here to be?" And I was like, "No, it is not." And with true conviction and in the absence of thinking I was going to win or an ego, I knew that I needed to fight that bear. And rather than feel this fear for one more second in my life, like this was the moment. Today was a good day to die. I didn't want to die, but I felt courage, and I stepped out, and there was this bear. We arrived, and it was fierce. And the minute
what the fuck? You're about to tell us you fought a bear? I'm like, I got some shoes on sale once when I was 17. They weren't on sale the week before, and then they were.
I did wrestle a shark, but that's another story.
What the
And he's
fuck?
telling us this, you guys, as he relights his hand-rolled cigarette. I'm just going to let you know that is part of the Sean Penn image that we're working with.
Can I just say how many people I keep meeting in Colorado are like fucking cigarette smoking, truck driving, big-hearted softies. There's this paradigm out here of like hot men that are like, "It's my cowboy hat, and I fuck that lady, and I spit over here, but I love my mama." And they don't have a Southern accent. But you get my point. It's like
I do.
It's
and the particular place you landed in Mancus draws those men. Like those are good men.
Yeah.
I know. I just keep meeting them. They're everywhere I turn.
Okay, but back to it. What happened?
Okay, the bear.
So I really can't express how much conviction I had and what needed to happen there. Like the question, is that what you came here to be? My answer was no.
Afraid.
And I did not come into this life to be this afraid. I was not given the question he asked when I fell off the cliff. I was not given all these gifts and these chances and these opportunity, and I was not given all this information to be afraid. And I was ready, and I was gonna punch that fucking bear in the fucking face as hard as I could. And the minute I looked at the bear, this love, just love, just all through me. And my hand opened up, and I reached out and I touched it on the face, and I said, I love you.
No.
I did. And the bear was furious at my trespass and my lack of fear. And it rose up, and the next thing I know, like, everything got blurry and hazy, and I don't know, like, I was pretty disoriented, and the bear disappeared into the world. And in its place was a woman, a Native American woman.
Wait a minute. What? Or what? Do you mean there was a bear and then there poof wasn't a bear? Like poof?
I chose not to fight, and I chose to love, and touched it and expressed my love. And the bear, the thing that was going to kill me, went away, and the thing that was going to love me showed up.
There was a lady there?
A woman.
In 3D reality, a woman.
Oh, we're talking 6D. Like, this was no ordinary woman. She was dressed in the regalia of sacred ceremony, and she was so beautiful. Like, her beauty just overwhelmed me in a such a beautiful way. And she goes, "Are you ready?" And I was like, "Yep." And we started walking, and we were in a different place. And the place I was walking was free of judgment. Everything was connected. The grass and the trees felt as beautiful as she did. The sky was still like, everything was connected. And she led me to this lake, and we sat down. And I remember feeling a lot of human emotions were removed from me. And it was like the highest state of mindfulness I've ever had. And it was like, I feel like the tourist here. I feel like which one of these things is not like the other. Me. I was not at the level of sacred that everything else was. And it was totally okay. There was no, like, it was totally okay. Like, that wasn't a bad thing. That was the truth. We sat down, and she looked at me, and she said, "Shane, you try to be so many things in your life. You try and be a rebel. You try and be a son, a brother, a man, a tough person." She goes, "You're none of these things. Do you want to know what you really are?" And I was like, "Yes, please." And she waved her hands and made me. And in front of me was me, a 3D me.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to be the
Don't be
person
sad.
that I am. Are we talking about you on drugs?
We were talking about the first 12 days of sobriety I'd had probably since I was 13 years old. We were
So
talking
no drugs.
the most sober I had been in my post-pubescent life.
That's all I needed. I needed to clarify. Is this a hallucination? Like, what's happening?
Probably some coffee. And
where can I buy that brand of coffee?
And these are really good questions. Like, these questions always get asked every time I tell the story. And I was listening to the podcast where your friend was telling the story about a metal in his neck disappearing, and
Peter,
the way he said, people like, I can't be afraid to tell the story because this is how I found my purpose, and this story is my purpose.
Right.
They gave me this because they know I will tell this story because I'm going to meet you, and you're going to put it. And this is the purpose. This is the function of it all working together.
Right.
Of perfection. And she said, and I looked at myself, and just like me, I was very unspectacular in this world. I was very less than everything else. And it was very okay. And I reached out and I grabbed my arm, and it was real. And I looked at myself, and I was unimpressed, and that was okay. And then, just like the bear, I dissolved. The me I was looking at dissolved, and it was gone. And in its place, chest high, was the light, ball of light. And this light was so beautiful. And when it was uncovered with myself, it washed over me, and it felt like a lot, like the dual feeling I had was just overwhelmed with like love and appreciation, like, Jesus Christ, that's so beautiful. And this other, like, I hadn't seen my best friend in so long, and there you are, and oh my God. And then I had this realization, like, it's real. We have a soul. It does matter. We are important. everything I want to believe in is true. And she let me bask in my own light. And I don't think the human eye is capable of seeing it. And I don't know if the human brain is capable of comprehending what the eye is trying to see in a normal waking world. Like it's too bright. It's too beautiful.
Yeah.
It could break you.
Yeah.
But we were in the place where it shines. And she let me stand in that long enough that it sunk in, and I will never forget it. And then she spoke, and she said, fear, anger, pain, guilt, drugs, alcohol, resentment. And she listed these things that are so much a part of me in my life at that time. And as she said it, my body built back up around that light. And when she was done speaking, it was gone. And there I stood, totally unspectacular, less than everything else around me. And she said, do you get it? I said, I do that to myself. She said, yep.
Oh.
And I go, she goes, I need to know that you really get it. And I'm like, I'm divine. I have a soul. I'm beautiful. Like I am one with everything. Like it's real. And she said, yes. And I go, in my fear and the way I handle my fear, and the way I move through the world, I totally hide that light. I'm afraid to shine it. I'm afraid to know it. And I remember saying, like, if that's what I am, it's a shame I don't know it. And again, there wasn't a judgment around that. That was just fact. Like that is sad. That is tragic. You don't know that. And I said, this is all of us, isn't it? And she said, yes. And I said, can I be this? And she said, yes. And I said, and if I can do this, other people will know that they can. And she said, yes. And I said, so that's what I'm supposed to do, because I want that. I want to feel like that for my own reasons. And I want other people to feel like that because it feels beautiful. And she said, yes. And I said, okay. And then we sat for a moment in silence, and I was pondering it. And they were all just beautiful thoughts of what I get to go do now with my life. There were no limits, because there were no limits. And I remember it was time to go. And I got up and I said, thank you. She said, you're welcome, Shane. Good luck. And I started walking away, and I turned around, and for some reason, this like made it so real for me. Like there she was, she had taken out her braid, and she had a brush made out of a tortoise shell. And she was brushing her hair, looking at her reflection in the lake with the absolute absence of vanity, with just this total appreciation for what it is. Like this was her purpose, to bring me from the dark and from fear, put me back in the world intact with information, and then see what happens. And she had done, like, I just remember her grace in knowing that she had just done what she was supposed to do, and in the appreciation of that moment. And I was staring, and then she looked up at me and she said goodbye. And I took a step, and the next thing I know, I'm sitting on a rock in Arizona, and it's yeah.
No.
And it's fucking dark out. And
no.
Time had passed. It wasn't dark when I sat down, and the entire memory was taken away from me.
Real quick for the listener, because they couldn't see you do this gesture, he put his head back on his fist like the thinker from the beginning of the story. So he's back on the rock before the bear moment. Carry on. Just as I had sat, and it was dark. And the thing that hit me, and the memory, like I said, was totally taken away from me. I had no idea what just fucking happened, but I felt violated. I felt penetrated. I felt terrified. I felt totally afraid. I had no idea what the fuck just happened to me, but I know that something had been inside of me, is the best way to put it. Like something had happened, something really fucking significant had happened, and I don't know what it was. And I got up and I started like stumbling through the dark and trying to get out of there. And my dog, Bridger, who never would have left my side, who had joined us in this, she was with me the whole time, through the bear, with the woman, just being Bridger, just sitting there. Like it took a lot to get him here. Like she had done her job. Like she was a player in this. And I didn't even think about her, which I normally would have. But I'm trying to get back to my car. I'm trying to figure out what just happened to me. And like I said, I'm scared. And I stop and I'm like, what just fucking happened? And I stop
and I felt my feet get warm and the top of my head get warm, and this heat passed through my body in these two different directions heading towards the middle. And when they reached my chest, this explosion of light and the entire memory was put back in place in my mind in a non-linear way. It wasn't A, B, C, it was the whole thing all at once, totally ingrained and there. And I inhaled and I went, oh, we have a soul. Oh my God, it matters. And Bridger came out of nowhere and like jumped onto me, and like her move was like when she was really excited, she'd try and like knock me over, and I just grabbed her and I was like, I knew you weren't just a dog, and held her and set her down, and I looked up at the sky and the stars and I felt the light from my chest come out and up in like a laser, like it was sharp and it wasn't fading, and it was strong enough. There was some being somewhere that is seeing that light and thinking it's a star. Like it went to where it came, I think, but I felt it. And I went back to my car and I wrote it all down. And the next morning I got up and I went into the desert for 3 nights and 4 days with a can of tuna and a bottle of water. And I was so high with this information. And then as I was hiking through that day, I realized, well, now fucking what? How the fuck am I going to do that? Like a bunch of doubt and human emotion crept in. And I was like, I have no idea how to do this. Like this is terrifying. I was just given a job I'm unequipped and ill prepared for, way out of my depth. And so I did the one thing I knew how to do, and I built a fire, and I built it big. And I raged all night, and I yelled at that fire, and I was naked and it was cold, and I was so close to it. It was like burning the front of me. And I was just screaming and crying and purging all this stuff. And I remember like being exhausted at one point, and I looked back at the sky and I'm like, I don't know how to do this. Help me. And the voice came back in and it said, you have to forgive. And I said, I remember the feeling that I had the day before, seeing that light and knowing that I could possibly be it, and comparing it to how I felt daily in my life and all the things I held on to, like the people that needed to be forgiven, like the people that have hurt me. I was like, no problem, like done, forgiven. And the voice came in very fatherly and it said, no, you have to forgive yourself. And that hit like a punch. And I was like, I can't do that. That's not really, I can't do that. I've hurt people. I don't have the right to forgive myself for hurting people. And the voice just came in the strong man way, and it said, it is the only way, and hung up the phone. And I wouldn't hear that voice again fucking years. And I stayed in that. Yeah. So I just yelled and screamed at the fire just as much as I could, and tried to just wrestle with the idea of forgiving myself, and woke up in the dirt and the ash, freezing my ass off. The fire had burned down, crawled into my tent, cuddled my dog, and woke up probably around 10 the next day and felt empty for the first time in my life in the most best way. Like you just cleaned out the fucking garage. Like a house cleaning had occurred and I was empty. And I realized that I have all this space inside me to fill with new things. And I was just given like a map and a purpose and a function and the tools and the mission. And I get to choose what goes back in here. And feeling just light as air. And I hiked on to another camp. And then that night I climbed up to something real hot and I tried to call again and there was no fucking answer. And so I was a little disappointed, but cool. I mean, I got, that should be enough. And stayed one more night. And that night I had a dream. And my concept of Jesus has always been like, people lie about him and they use him and very distorted message. And I don't hold Jesus accountable for that. I hold humans. And I had a dream and I was sitting on this hillside looking at this beautiful big valley like Africa. And I looked to my left and Jesus was sitting there and he scared me. And I was like, what the fuck, Christ?
Did you say Jesus?
I was like, what the fuck, Christ? I think I said, what the fuck, Christ? And I go, don't you have anything better to do is sneak up on people? And he's like, I do, but I really like your company. And I was like, that's probably the nicest thing ever said to me. Thank you. Like, and then we sat and looked at the valley together, and a storm began brewing way back, like darkness, just darkness. And you could hear this kind of roar, like this rumble growing and growing, and the storm was approaching us. And we weren't scared. We were both just sitting there watching, and he was just as like enthralled as I was. I'm like, look at this thing coming our way. And as it neared, it was every animal. Like it was this stampede of animals, like bears and rhinos and elephants and gazelles, and like just fucking ripping up this valley. And the storm was the dust, the rumble was the hooves and the paws and the fucking beating of the earth by this stampede. And it came right at us, and then we were on a hill, and it just turned and went with the valley and went right past us. And we just got to watch like the splendor of it all. And I remember looking over at him, and like his excitement for it was equal to mine. He was so like, he loved it. And he looked just like I was shown that all my life that Jesus looks. And I believe that he came to me in a way that I would recognize him as him, just as the bear came, because they knew a bear would do it for me. I was spoken to in a language I could understand. And we just sat there and kind of like took a breath. And he said, here's the deal, Shane. I need you to teach my lessons. And I was like, fuck that. Fuck that. Fuck that. No fucking way, dude. I hate that guy. I just quit drinking. Now you want me to go talk about Jesus. I'm like, that dude sucks. Like, I'm going to alienate everybody. That guy has no credibility to me in the world. Like, oh, I just quit drinking. I found God. Like, you need to come this way. I like, do you know this cliche that I'm talking about? This person?
Of course.
Like,
of course.
So I'm like, no. I'm like, I just got all this information, man. Like, let me do it. And he's like, I'm like, no. I was like, no, I hate that guy. And he said, that's why it is you. And I had already accepted the job, even though I was protesting. You don't say no. And I sat there and I was like, okay. It's like, I'll do it. And I don't know how it's going to look, but I'll do it. And then he's like, I know you will. And he got up and he started walking away. He goes, I'll see you later. And as he's walking away, I'm pretty good at comebacks. Like, and I go, oh, I don't know your lessons, man. And I'm like, I don't read that book. Nope, I can't do it. And what I said was, I don't know your lessons. And he looked around, and the eyes matched the voice. And it said, yes, you do. And it told me that he just gave me permission to not be biblical, but to be loving and kind. And everything I just learned was part of the lesson. He was also an ambassador. I don't know where he sits in the throne of God and all that, but he's part of this whole thing too. And however I needed to be taught and communicated with. Are you raising your hand?
Yes. There's two things. One is I have a magical relationship with numbers, where the numbers, about a year and a half ago, this started, where I cannot go. Okay, let me just calm down. The whole time you were talking, Shane, the reason I had to interrupt you is because of time, because I need to be aware of time for me, but B, because the whole time you were talking, the only time my eyes saw the time on my computer was 3 o'clock, 3:03, 3:13, 3:30, and 3:33. And I didn't look any other time, and I kept being like, oh, there it is, there it is, there it is. It happens all the time. So I have this book. This is the Lightworker Oracle. This is a deck of really powerful Lightworker cards that I use to pull sometimes when I'm reading for people or myself. I call this deck the Big Guns deck, because it's really, these cards are like super high vibrational. So then there's one card called the Messages and the Numbers card, which I refer to all the time, because lately, since I moved to Colorado, it's the one, always the one, number 1, 111, 1111, all the ones, all the fucking time. How much does the gas cost? It's $1.11. And then I'll have days where the whole theme of the day is 7. I only ever see numbers that are 7. And it's so all day long, repetitive. You can't, there's no, I'm making it up that I'm seeing it. It's like crazy obvious, just like when you were just talking. So I pulled open the page that talks about the different numbers, and this is what it said. And I kept waiting for the part where this is what it says. The frequency of the 3. Oh my God. We need to open the records, by the way, because the energy, we need to. The frequency of the 3 indicates a time to learn, write, teach, or develop new ideas, collaborate with others, and create win-win situations. It's also the number stamp of the ascended masters, particularly multiple 3s, affirming their connection with you. Jesus the Christ is an ascended master. So I was listening to you and aware of the 3s and reading about the 3s and going, some ascended master is here with him, speaking through him, a part of this whole fucking story. And then you ended with Jesus the Christ. And I was like, oh.
And for me, when I tell this story, like Glenn said, like he has to tell it without fear because judgment occurs. And it's funny that the most worried about that I get is when I say Jesus.
Yeah,
of course.
Like, we all have our stories. The exact guy that you were saying you hate pops up in our head.
Of course.
Yeah. And like
the new youth pastor who's, you know.
At the end of this, I would like to ask you all if you're ready to, now you know what I mean? Yeah. If you're ready to accept.
Here's some literature.
Yeah. Here's a pamphlet.
But see, that's what the listeners need to hear that I need to point out is that this is the point is that we all have our filters about this Jesus idea. And it's no coincidence we're talking about him today when the past week when I've been channeling in the morning just for myself, for my own healing, I've been bringing in the Christ light. I never bring in the Christ light, but I've been bringing in the Christ light because these cards, by the way, same fucking deck, have been telling me you're turning into the Christ light, so you may as well go ahead and bring it in. And I'm like, what? So I've been channeling Christ light all the time. And in every client session this week, it's come up. The record keepers will say, cool, bring the Christ light through for that injury in her neck or for his heart or whatever. So what I want to say about that is that, you know, in the same way, Shane, that you have your filters or you had your filters about fucking Jesus, and I'm not going to teach his bubbity boo. You know, when I talk about the Christ light, it's the same. People are like, what are you're religious now? Now you're teaching, come on, is this Bible school? What people have to understand is that each ascended master has its own vibrational frequency. So Kuan Yin, Green Tara, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, all the Tibetan ascended masters, all the Hindu ascended masters, all the Buddhist ascended masters, all the Arabic ones. And then there's Jesus. He's just one fucking ascended master. There's a lot of ascended masters. But Jesus the Christ has an incredibly powerful, very bright, whitish, goldish light that is so affecting and that resonates with white people. Now, the way I've been shown things in the other realms is that the different ascended masters came to the earth in the parts of the earth they came to because the people in that part of the earth could receive it that way. Yeah. So the Arabs needed Muhammad and the white folks needed Jesus and the Asian ladies need Kuan Yin and whatever, because that's what we can receive. And additionally, they each deliver different vibrational frequencies of light. And Jesus, the Christ light, happens to be so potent and so bright. And when you were describing, Shane, the moment where the light came from the top and it came from the bottom, and then you remembered the whole thing, that was transmitted at me energetically. And I was like, oh, we're talking about the Christ light again. And now, anyway, so my guides are like, can you please open the records? It's time to open the records because we need to bring actual light into this conversation now in an actual way. And I'm not sure why. They're just kind of pushing on me. So that's when I have to speak up. Okay. Are you ready, Cass?
So ready.
Okay. How are you doing, Cassidy, Jamal Brown?
I'm great. I'm loving this.
You got your smoking
commentary,
jacket.
but it's more amusing commentary than anything else. So I can wait.
Let's hear it. What do you got?
Oh, well, okay. My quick thing is it occurred to me. I was like, wow, this story, which kept having a new chapter, and each new chapter was reminding me of a different thing. And so I was like, this is Way the Peaceful Warrior meets Carlos Castaneda meets the Lion King. Like...
I got married in a hut in Africa in the Maasai tribe, Hakuna Matata is why it's a real word. It's a real thing. And when my bride and I got back, The Lion King was fucking released. And we went,
my God, that's
oh my God, that's
there's
Swahili.
more of
That's
it.
Swahili.
They said Hakuna Matata.
Hakuna
But
Matata.
like the animals, that's when I was like, okay,
Yeah.
now it's the Lion King. But you did, you kind of, you hit all the books that I've read throughout my career of searching through these things, the Carlos Castaneda books, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. I'm sure there's one I'm missing, and then it hit the Lion King. That's all. I was amused. Go.
Okay, Shane, what's your full legal name, the name that's on your driver's license?
Shane Andrew Nelson.
Okay. My goodness.
Ooh.
You are a bright light, Shane. Okay, here we go. We're going to close our eyes just for a moment. I'm going to take over now. So I'm already kind of channeling. So forgive me. It's going to get intense and fast. That's because that's how it goes. Allah. And so we'll take a few deep breaths. Into the low belly. And let's just consciously expand our energy field. So imagine your energy field is like a ball of white light that starts at the heart chakra and expands 6 feet above your head, 6 feet below your feet, left, right, forward, and back, a big orb in every direction. And that this orb of white light is all little tiny molecules of white light. And that's all you are. Everything else is illusion of separation and duality. Allah. And so we'll see that big 6 foot in every direction ball of light expand Allah to the size of the building that you're in every direction. Good. And then it'll expand to the size of the entire city that you're in. Please let this be real in your energetic awareness and through your heart. And then let the ball of light expand to the size of the country that we're in. And then let the ball of light expand to the size of the earth. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammad abduhu wa rasulullah. Astaghfirullah ladim, astaghfirullah ladim, astaghfirullah ladim. Okay, and so Jesus the Christ is quite present right now. I'm going to open the records anyway, because I just am. So do we need to ground him or pull him in? No, okay. Breathing into your low belly now, feeling through the midline of your body, aware of whatever emotions or sensations arise for you. Allah. And so we do acknowledge the forces of light, asking for guidance, direction, and courage to know the truth as it is revealed for our highest good and the highest good of everyone connected to us. Allah, O Holy Spirit of God. Protect me from all forms of self-centeredness and direct my attention to the work at hand. Help me to know Shane Andrew Nelson, carrier of the Christ light. In the light of the Akashic Records, to see Shane Andrew Nelson, Allah, carrier of the Christ light, through the eyes of the Lords of the Records, and enable me to share the wisdom and compassion that the masters, teachers, and loved ones of Shane Andrew Nelson, a carrier of the Christ light, have for Shane Andrew Nelson. And I'll go quiet for just a moment. So, Lords, Masters, and Teachers of the Akashic Records for Shane Andrew Nelson, we're asking that you deepen us now into his records, that you raise the vibrational frequency of all 4 of us and everyone listening's Allah, body, being, soul, spirit, that we may experience direct Gnostic union with the Christ light that desires to be present in this moment. Anything and everything in our bodies, Shane, that is not of the Christ light, that desires to be elevated to that frequency, Shane, will you give it now to the Christ light?
Yes.
Okay. So feel into every place in your body that's holding anything tight, even if it's the smallest thing. Yes. In the 3rd chakra, in the spinal column, in the back of the neck, in the pelvic floor, in the hip sockets, in the knees, and anywhere else. Allah. Allah. And this is an offering now from the Lords, Masters, and Teachers of the Akashic Records, your higher self, God itself, that every cell of your body be made into the brightest light. Amen. And in your soul and in your heart and across all time, dimension, space, reality, and that the slate be made clear. That the slate be cleaned, whatever that means. Amen. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammad abduhu wa rasulullah. Okay, and so this time now, this is just some channeled information for you, Shane. This time now in your life, Allah is the next initiation period for you, where you have the opportunity to up-level your frequency even further, and where you have the opportunity to refine the hard edges of your embodiment and of your any remaining hard edges. They're showing me the image of like, it's like sandpaper inside of you in certain places, and the Christ light moves through you right now, sort of like peeling away that, you know how sandpaper is like a smooth texture, but then on top of it is all those little rough bumps. It's like smoothing all that shit off, turning you into the smooth river of light, the river of light. I mean, oh my goodness. You will have, as you carry forward, communion with the animals, the animal kingdom in a deeper way, which is to say the image of you they show me is up to your waist in the river that you spoke of, the river, walking through the river up to your waist. And you can conceive of a bird and the bird arrives. You can request that the water move and the water will move. You can liberate yourself and others from their restraints and constraints by dunking them, baptizing them, if you will, in this river. Allah. And every little nugget of you, every piece of you, every cell of your body, being, soul, spirit, across all time, dimension, space, and reality that is not aligned yet with this awareness and then with this knowing, Allah is now being brought to the light, transmuted, up-leveled. Allah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammad abduhu wa rasulullah. Okay, and one more piece before we turn to you with any questions you might have or requests, desires. If you could, beloved, feel into your heart at this time, as you already are, and into the place where you're still a little bit sure that there's something toxically wrong with you. There's something really just not fucking right. Could you please find that energy in your heart where that belief lives? No, but I really am fucked up. No, but I really am too much. No, but I really fucking am. Find that. Allah. And as you feel into the darkness of that place and the sickness of that place and the sadness and the grief and the rage and the hate that lives there, we bring the light to it, pulling it out of your system, transmuting it, Allah, dissipating and releasing it. Shane, they say, you know you are most yourself when you feel the most like nothing, when you feel like silence, space, wind, when you are merged into the vast oneness of the all that is, beyond love even, into space, spaciousness. This is you. Everything else and anything else you identify with is an illusion of three-dimensional reality based in judgment and duality. The Christ light is white, expansive, bright, with golden tint throughout. This is your true essential nature. They're saying it's like you're a spiritual Pied Piper. I think the Pied Piper was leading people to death or something, but you're like a bright Christ light Pied Piper leading the children to liberation. Amen. And so it is. thank you for your light and for being here and for your presence. It's a gift for us, all of us here, to get to experience the Christ light as directly as we get to in your records, in your soul's alignment with Source. Okay, I said last thing, but there's one more. Before you incarnated this time, you agreed to be the Christ light for the people, and you knew there would be trials and tribulations, and you knew it would be difficult, but you saw the whole journey before you chose it. Wow. And what makes you even more Christly, as it were, is when you chose this life, you chose a form that would resonate for, we want to say what is it? The meek shall inherit the earth. The meek, those who, you didn't choose a form. I will come to this life and embody the Christ light as a CEO of a fucking financial whatever. You came in to be relatable to the people, like the real people. You understand?
Yes.
Now, that is not sexy, right? People are not like, me, let me serve the lowly among us. Nobody's lining up except for when they are. And that is the embodiment of the Christ light. And so it is, hallelujah, namaste, la ilaha illallah, thank you for your service. It's real, and it's time to go to the next level. And that is not a metaphor, that is literal for you. Okay, we would love any questions you have.
So much of my life has been wrapped around the idea of a partnership with a woman. And I think just this year I finally grasped that I don't grasp unconditional love, but I know that it's the way. And my question is, wow, I think that question got answered. Where should I put my tiny home?
I love that question so much.
What do you love about it, Cassidy?
Well, I've been on and on about, I've just been obsessing about the idea of either a tiny or a mobile or a really nice motorhome.
Yeah.
And I asked the record keepers and they kind of went like, meh, not necessarily right for you. I was like, I'm disappointed, but it's still in my heart. I haven't let go.
I'm in mine right now.
Yeah. So that's why when you asked that question, I was like, oh, I feel you so much on that.
Okay, can we go back, please, to the question about unconditional love and a partner? Because there's some information there.
Yeah.
What did you mean when you said, it's about unconditional love, and then you said that question got answered? What do you mean by all of that?
I think leveling up is learning unconditional love for real. And I'm really just in July, I didn't want to be me anymore. The pain of loss, of love being lost, like the human processing of that, and like there's nothing bigger. I'm tired of it. Like it is, but it is my greatest catalyst. Like to bring Christ back into it. Like it is how I resurrect. It is how I gather back together and pick the pieces up that I need and get back to fucking work after the heart is mangled and I am left and betrayed sometimes. And
okay, but what do you mean by unconditional love?
I want to be able to love without needing it back in a way that like causes a lot of damage and pain to me. Like
Okay. Let me just listen to this. Just there is a little misunderstanding in there. Allow us to illuminate. The place where you can do unconditional love is in your service work. It's where you serve the people. It's where you emanate light. We see you standing in a like a Trump rally, emanating light and love at the hate in the circle. We see you in the circle of kids sharing their feelings. No matter what anyone says, you hold them in love unconditionally. Now, relationally, it's different. In romance, there's a way that it's not unconditional. If it's unconditional, people get injured. This is a complicated thing for humans to understand. Behind the conditions that are required in a romantic relationship is unconditional love. But human beings must meet certain conditions inside of their relational dynamic in order for the relational dynamic to function. So you can't be unconditionally loving in a relationship in the sense that you must be willing to, there are conditions on it. That doesn't make you judgmental or not of the Christ light. Unconditional love is not actually your problem in relationship. It's your expectations for who you should be and who they should be relationally with you. The unconditional love you seek comes through the Christ light. It's not to be expected to be given by you to humans or by humans to you in a romantic context. The conditions inside of a romantic context are that you be treated with respect, that there be boundaries that are respected on both sides for each individual, that when you have an emotional need and when they have an emotional need, that it gets met, period. And that when there is rupture, you find a way to sincere, actual, and complete repair. Not patch it up, make it better, put a Band-Aid on it with nicey words, but you find the actual repair after the rupture. And I'm just listening. Are there other conditions? No. Okay, so maybe that's obvious for you. I'm not certain, but does this make sense so far?
Yeah. And
Okay.
it's beautiful to hear.
Okay, great. So they want to be even more clear. Expecting unconditional love. This is tricky. The language is not quite right. We're going to say two sentences that may seem to be opposing each other because they kind of are a little bit. Expecting unconditional love in a romantic context is the problem. That's the problem. There isn't any. And paradoxically, there is. In other words, let's say you fall in love with someone and you know the feeling. You fall. Your heart is bigger than the sun. And your heart is her heart and they're one and it's beyond and it's vast. And you feel like God just by looking in her eyes. Hallelujah. Now,
Amen.
Time goes by. Things happen. Emotions occur. People fight. You don't just unconditionally love her and never demand any emotional needs be met. You don't just unconditionally love and become a doormat. You don't be unconditionally loved inside your own shitty behavior either. You can't be shitty at each other and expect to continue to be loved. That is not how it works. And it shouldn't be. That's called abuse. That's called codependent enmeshment. But what you can expect, okay, this is where the paradox is to be unconditionally loving about how you approach repair. You can be loving in how you repair the ruptures. But the ruptures must be spoken up for and must be repaired completely. So if she loses trust in you or faith in you, you must re-earn that faith. You don't get to just have it because you want it or because you think she should just love you unconditionally. That is not okay in 3D reality. Vice versa. If she's mean and withholding and shut down, that doesn't work. That's not okay. You don't just love her while she treats you like shit. You have to get the emotional needs met. But how you approach getting them met and the way you do it and the energy you do it with and the open-hearted softness you approach the conversation with can be loving. That's where you remove yourself from the room, find your light again, come back to your center, come back and speak with gentleness about what you need and about what's not okay for you. And same with her. Okay, does that make sense?
So much sense.
Is there more on that topic? No. Cool. Okay, one more thing. When you are so moved, there is a book called Witness to the Fire, Creativity and the Veil of Addiction. We would request that you read the chapter on the romantic. This book is divided into chapters about different Jungian archetypes. There is a piece of wisdom for you in the romantic chapter we would like you to visit or revisit.
Couldn't be more my language. That couldn't be more like you just put a sentence together of words that I've like have over here and over here and over here and Jung and archetype and like boom. I'm so glad somebody wrote it down and made a record of it.
Yeah. All right. Do you have any other questions?
Do you see my dad?
We could see your dad. Do you want to ask that or the tiny home? Because I think we have time for one.
I'm going to go with the flow on the tiny home. I really just want to say hi to my dad,
Okay. What's your dad's name?
Ricky Small.
Wow.
Apparently, he was a giant of a man.
All right. Ricky Small, are you available? Is this your birth father or your other father?
My birth father.
And what would you like to ask or say to him?
Just want to know he's still out there. I just want to tell him I love him and thank you for what he gave.
What did I give you?
And then he could come pick me up hang out with me anytime. He gave me a way. He showed me the way not to live.
Give me a moment. Okay. So he's still around. He sort of like hasn't moved on out of guilt.
He can go.
But it's more out of that's why you needed to talk to him, because he needed to be freed.
He can go.
Now he
Dad, like fuck yeah, man. Thank you. I love what you gave me and I know what it is. And it's fucking special.
Well, his soul would have liked to have given you the love. And in fact, his soul would have liked to have given you the Christ light, because he had it. He has it. He is it.
He did. I think he did.
Well, he's just saying, I would have liked to have done it in the way that a father does with a son, that doesn't do it in the shitty, hard, painful way. And I need you to hear me say that. Yes, you got the lesson, you got the teaching, you're very smart. Now, let it touch your heart that I love you so much. I wish I could have been a real man in your life. And I did wrong. All is right in the big picture, and I acknowledge my failings. You deserved better. Just by you calling me here, you have liberated me from my stasis. You just unlocked my soul from purgatory just by caring enough to ask me to visit. Do you understand how special you are?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm good. Bye.
Right on, Dad.
Okay, Ricky Small, can you go ahead and leave my body now? You can head on up to whatever next layer of wherever you're going.
Oh,
That was cool.
that was fucking rad.
He came in like
so fucking rad.
all like dense and heavy and stuff, and then then it when you said you can go, all casually the way you said it, you can go, he just went ping and just shifted and then said that stuff. That was a fucking trip.
When I wanted to find my mom because I realized the amount of pain she must have been in, it was back like I realized, I just knew it or felt it somehow, and I wasn't looking for my dad anymore. I didn't need those answers. I needed to tell her I was okay, and that and thank you for your fucking courage and suffering in that choice. And I just felt the exact same way about him. Like, oh my God, what a life I've had. Like, and he gave me the fucking that twinkle, fucking like that beautiful fuck you.
Okay, I think that's it.
That's enough.
I'm gonna close your records for a second.
Okay.
So thank you to the masters, teachers, and loved ones for their love and compassion. Whew. I want to thank the Christ light for its presence today. I want to thank the Christ in Shane, whose name I almost forgot. I'd like to thank the lords of the Akashic Records for their point of view, the Holy Spirit of light for all knowledge and healing. I ask that you return all of Shane Andrew Nelson's energy to himself now. Return all of Shane's energy to himself now. Return him to his complete human wholeness. The divine portal and the Akashic Records for Shane Andrew Nelson are now closed. Amen. The divine portal and the Akashic Records for Shane Andrew Nelson are now closed. Amen. Divine portal and the Akashic Records for Shane Andrew Nelson are now closed. Amen. 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 Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
That's a good one, y'all. I think this is where we just wrap it up because we're way over our time.
Way over time. All right. Shane, I honestly, truly, bottom of my soul, from the widest, brightest parts of my being, I thank you. Namaste. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being who you are. Thank you for sharing your truth and your light with us. Yeah, that was a treat. Christ light is not to be fucked with. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Woof. I mean, I think it is to be fucked with in the sense that, like, I fucks with some Christ light.
Right. Okay. I love you guys. I'm out.
Thank you
Katie's
so
gonna
much.
just go. We'll talk.
You
It'll
guys
be awesome.
bro out. Just bro
We're
out.
done. We're done. Do your work.
Oh yeah. Do your work. Everybody, do your work.
What are you asking for? All of the answers? Say what? All of the answers? Yeah, all the answers.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. We'd love to hear from you. Please email us with your questions so that we have questions to answer in the Akashic Records. Our email address is allanswerspod@gmail.com. That's allanswerspod@gmail.com. And if you'd like to find us on Facebook or Twitter, it's @allanswerspod, @allanswerspod. Thank you.
Oh no.
Wow, she can sit still.
This happens sometimes. Katie freezes out. So I don't know if she knows that she froze out though. So she may be delivering deep, deep wisdom right now. She'll be back.
Would it? Oh, that's how perfect. Like, I do feel this is like the challenge of my life, like feeling my purpose and knowing it, and just still being such a chump. Is it like, I don't want to be self-deprecating, but just like the fool in the tarot cards. Like, I just go in, man, and I go all in, and I get trundled at the end.
Well, she dropped off.
she
She'll be
went.
back. She'll sign back on. But we can keep talking. We can.
How are
I'm
you?
good. I am really appreciating your stories and resonating a lot with what you say. And I have almost the diametrically opposite. If you've listened to other episodes, you've sort of heard that my story is one of minimal trauma and great parenting and all the sort of gifts that I was handed. And, but the struggle ends up sometimes being the same. Like, without those catalysts of the cracks, like, what is, how do I find my purpose? But it's not actually, it's all, we all have it. We all have some version of that.
I think that it's harder for people who don't get fucking hammered. Like,
because I don't
by
have
life.
to recover from it. I don't have to claw
no
my way back
necessity.
in.
Right.
But
the depth of the feel, like, you might not realize how deep you are capable of feeling about things, or being hurt, or feeling joy. And you're really, I really like you, Cassidy. Like, I like to keep this going
let's
somehow.
do it. Well, you dropped off. You're here. Yes. Can you hear us?
Yeah, but we couldn't. The minute you started answering.
This has happened before, Katie.
But I'm not surprised.
One time Katie said, she literally said, the secret to it all is.
That was a Sounds Awesome production.